For recording. All right, this is the April 3rd meeting of the Energy Advisory Committee. And let's just make sure everybody's here. Betsy Blaisdell,
Here.
Tom Rooney, here. Betsy Cameron,
Here.
Herb Lloyd, Peter Somsich. Here. Hey, Cook, Counselor Cook, and Kevin Schreck cannot join us tonight for some.
Is Ben
minor-
no longer on the?
Oh, and Ben said he had a conflict as well.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, no, Ben's very much.
good. I didn't hear his name.
Yes,
Oh.
yeah, and Ben D'Antonio.
Don't panic us.
Right, he's the guy who knows all our energy stuff. A couple of remarks just before we get going. We voted last time to have a green energy challenge among the seacoast towns for how many opt-ups we can get in community power. And I'm happy to say that Dover and Newmarket and Durham are up for the challenge. Rye is going to mention at their energy committee meeting Tuesday, and they suggested I reach out to Exeter. So I think we'll have maybe an organizational Zoom with energy committee people and town managers sometime in the next couple of weeks. And get ourselves a nice splash fancy trophy and figure out how we do the publicity around that. So it's coming along. So I'm happy about that. Next, I wanted to introduce Katrin Casper from Clean Energy New Hampshire. And she is what the Clean Energy calls one of the circuit riders.
Mhm. I am.
Yes,
I am the Seacoast Energy Circuit Rider, which makes me your circuit rider.
cool.
And I'm just going to give you like a really quick rundown, just so you understand a little bit about how clean energy works and what my role in specific will be, so we know how to work together. Our goal really is to move obstacles out of the way so that we can get projects done, so that we can move towards the energy projects we want to get done. And the thing is that there are different ways to do that. One is policy, and that is not the group that I work in. And then the other is the actual boots on the ground, getting the work done. That's where I am. I work with all the 50 towns and cities of Stratford and Rockingham County. And I think I'd like to look at it in different ways. And that policy is kind of like, how can we start planning now for down the road to make sure change happens in the rules? And then there's projects like you guys work with CPCNH. So you have some projects down the road. They're working on plans. We got a ways to go. Like projects aren't happening yet. We're not really at that place yet. What I really focus on is what are we going to do this year? What can we fix? What can we change? What can we actually accomplish this year? And so that's really where I want to kind of figure out what your goals are and how I can be most able to assist you. One thing that I found challenging last year, and I'm really excited to hear you guys are changing, is that you used to have sustainability and energy were kind of interconnected. We found that they really are two very separate topics. And I think I heard you guys talking in one of your meetings about how they really are different. I'm really excited you're thinking about going forward. And community power aggregation is different than what we're doing. So it's nice if you have an energy committee that's really primed and ready for what we want to do to go forward. A couple other things I heard you talk about, and then I want to ask questions more than talk. Some people were talking about some school funding opportunities. That's something we absolutely like working on. And there are some programs right now where if you have 10 or more schools that work together, there are really great funding opportunities. There are not as many for just individual school projects. So Portsmouth has quite a few schools and might be a great partner for some other schools to work with. Also, school buses. There are very few schools that want to buy a new fleet of buses, but there are many schools that would like to buy one and see how it goes. The problem a lot of schools have is that they say, I don't want to not be able to use the school to go to meets because I don't know what happens if I don't have range. So a great thing is if we think about some strategic partners where we're driving to, make sure that they're the ones also grabbing a new school bus. And then you have chargers in all those places that you can work together with. So that's a project that would be great for someone to work on with schools. Some of the things that my biggest amount of time spent right now is working on 1 to 5 megawatt arrays. And I know you guys talked a lot about community power. And there are different ways, there are different names for what everyone kind of calls community power. There could be a solar garden that people can purchase, from, and that can be an individual. There could be an LMI community solar array. And then there could be something that's municipally purchased. The number one thing I'm working on is the 1 to 5 megawatt arrays that are using the municipal power. There are a lot of programs that are very good for investors and are really exciting. But one thing I just want to have you really think about as you're going down this path is when you own your solar and your power, then all the benefit comes to you. I was on the select board in my own town. I understand that revenue is one of the hardest things to get. It's very easy to think of things to spend money on. It's very hard to bring money in. Much smaller towns than you are looking to purchase their own arrays. It's an incredible opportunity, and I'm spending a lot of time figuring out how to maximize benefit, how to look into working with bond banks and different ways to find funding. We have found that within 1 to about 7 years, you're saving more money than you're spending on the bond. So it's really a big town like a city like yours can really maximize the potential there. So before you start signing up with anyone else and buying from them, think about that as an option. And I would love to help you with that. There was some talk about joining with other towns, which I love. I will say there was a comment that I think is interesting and just something to be aware of. Somebody had said we should contact some of the sleepy little towns like Exeter and Rye. If you only knew what Exeter and Rye were already doing, they have a lot to teach you and a lot to share with you. So I would definitely suggest that you work together, but don't be too sure. There's a lot happening in those towns. You might not realize Exeter just won this grant. It was one of 12 in the entire country. I'm forgetting the initials, EECBG. Yeah. And that's a big deal. And they're doing some great work there. They also just purchased their own solar. So that a huge array, one of the biggest, and they're one of the few to actually own that. So definitely reach out to them. I know Rye is working on some big projects and all around. And one of the easiest ways to do that is New Hampshire Network has really changed the way it's organized. And so they have a policy side and then they have an energy committee side. It's working out how exactly that's going to work. But that is, I can get you the exact dates. It's on a Wednesday, I think at 3.
The next meeting's on the 17th at 3 p.m.
Thank you. So perfect. So if everyone is, just know who's the person who's in touch, who's paying attention, who's asking questions. Sometimes the meetings might be not at the speed everyone wants them to be. That's something that as we get better and everyone learns what they're thinking about, you can break off into subgroups. There's things that you can learn that way too. So that's a really nice way to reach out to your other communities. And then let's see, there are some other, somebody mentioned working with Rockingham Regional Planning Commission. I don't know if you have anyone that's on the commission from the Energy Committee. Do you? No?
Not from our committee, but Councillor Moreau is the upcoming chair.
Okay.
The alternate for that.
Beautiful. Yeah. So just make sure that you're there. I know I'm on all of ours in Stratford, and even things like the transportation, what a great opportunity to share ideas about energy that might not have come up in that room. And that's where big decisions are made for the region. So really good to have people in those rooms. And what else did I want to respond to? Yeah. And somebody had brought up energy efficiency and ways of using ordinances. That's something that we work on a lot. We kind of find that there's a calendar for most towns. I think you're slightly different being a city, but this is really the time of the year that you want to work on ordinances in a way that will be ready for election in March for towns. So you can figure out what your schedule is and really reach out, look into who's doing work on that. One of the best companies we've worked with, organizations through the government that we worked with, is SoulSmart. I don't know if you've heard of them. Okay, great.
We joined them.
Perfect, perfect. So have you worked on the solar ordinance then with them? Because I don't remember your name being on the
Solar what?
Soul Smart. You've done the solar ordinance work with them?
We've joined Soul Smart and we're waiting for our designation.
Beautiful. Okay. Perfect. So you guys are on it all on that stuff. That's awesome. All right. So the last thing is, for me that I want to share with you is we do have, energy weeks and local energy solution conferences. I know some of you come to those. Energy Week has a lot of things you can zoom into and just listen to. And we also have recordings. It's just a really nice opportunity to kind of learn like what's that next thing we're focused on, what's the next big step, make contacts and connections. We do have a big fun event last day, and that's a great place to meet new people and actually get to talk to vendors and things. And then in the fall, I think it'll be on, I want to say, I'm forgetting the day, I apologize, but early November, end of October is LES. And that is when we really bring together everyone from around the state and as far as we can to come up with brand new ideas and really share with you success stories. So those are some of the things just from like listening to some of your meetings and getting ideas about where you're going. What I would love to know is what are things that you feel like you keep kind of finding a roadblock or you're just not able, we keep working on this and we're not getting anywhere. How can I help get you some traction?
So we're going down, we have two working groups
Mhm.
from last meeting. One is looking at community solar, and that's from a solar developer does it, and we get the discounts to all the way to our own solar.
Perfect.
So we're in the exploratory phase on that.
Great.
I'd be really interested in hearing about Exeter and about other success stories.
Yeah.
We can take a few minutes and talk about that. We also, you mentioned the Exeter grants. Tracy has been working on
Perfect.
these energy efficiency block grants. We're going to get an update on that tonight, so
Perfect.
stick around. and-
Awesome. I would love that if that's okay. That's the thing. Energy Circuit Rider really can bring the stories to town. So if you are learning things we can bring somewhere else, that's incredible. Perfect.
I think there's a lot of opportunity for grants in the Inflation Reduction Act.
Absolutely.
And you can maybe cross-pollinate what other towns have done. Help us with that,
Absolutely.
because it's daunting to go to those websites.
Right. And who has time? I mean, this is literally what I do all day long and I have the time because that's all I do. But to have the rest of your life and also have time to go through all that, that's why we'd love to partner with you as much as possible.
Great. Before we go to one of our working groups, though, tell us what you know about Exeter doing their own solar array.
Okay.
I think Lebanon is doing one as well.
Yeah, and I will tell you, I very much focus just on the Seacoast region. So there are absolutely other things going on. I did actually work with Bo and they did just vote in the largest municipal solar. That's leased through Kearsarge. And so that is a 6.2 megawatt, and that's because it's on different properties. So they have a big area, and then they also have some other areas that all go together. So
Part of
That's-
that's on the landfill, am I right?
yes, and
Yeah.
you know about the additional tax credit.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah, because we have a landfill here in town, so that's something we've been watching.
Perfect.
Bo and some others. There's a few others. I think there's.
Yep.
At least 6 or 8 that I found that recently in the state
Mhm.
have put solar arrays or are planning to put solar arrays on
Absolutely.
closed landfills.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's a huge one.
So there's a lot of folks that are ahead of us if that's, something we end up looking at.
Yeah. So you can,
Were you thinking about Jones Avenue or?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've had a few conversations previously with Brian Getz over at DPW about that and kind of picked his brains on what he knows about the status and condition of that landfill.
yeah.
Yeah.
Is it designated a brownfield yet?
It is not on
It's
the
a step.
brownfield list.
Okay, so that's one of the steps
Yeah.
that they're working. I know Rockingham is working on
You
that.
know, yeah, and not to get in too deep on that, but one of the challenges is producing electricity over there. What do you do with it? Right, versus say producing electricity at the high school where it's consumed at the high school and it's all behind the
Behind the
meter.
meter, yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of things to look at.
Council.
I know that, Exeter has put theirs at their transfer station.
Mhm.
And I don't know that if that's something that we've ever looked at. I mean, it'd have to be a small array to go at our transfer station and DPW buildings, but something to think about at least.
The prices are better than they've ever been. And so a lot of towns, they looked into it maybe 5 years ago and it just seemed overwhelming. And especially with a 30% direct pay option, really incredible. So yeah, behind the meter, of course, is a great place to go. Another thing a lot of towns are starting to do is thinking about where are we about to pull up a parking lot? Where are we about to do some of that work where we can put some beautiful solar that's going to protect our pavement, which we all know is expensive and costly to deal with. It's going to give better cover for the cars. There's a lot of different ways to look at solar. Yeah, so behind the meter is lovely.
And to piggyback on that, the school, Portsmouth High School, they're pulling back that project a little bit, revamping it for redoing the parking lot. And some folks were asking me about guidance on including in scope of the project to redo the parking lot, to include the infrastructure under, so that in the future we could
Yes.
they
Yes, we
could do
voted that.
and I directed them to reach out to you. And John, I don't know if anybody has reached out to you yet from the school district.
No, but that was your motion, wasn't it?
Yeah, Josh Dutton and I, moved that forward, and that's part of our new green buildings. That's a green buildings policy, which is internal. Peter also knows about this. To the city, it's not a city council policy. It's a staff policy, the city manager's policy, that whenever we do any kind of paving, significant paving of parking lots, that we examine whether or not we
Brilliant.
can do a solar array or what it would take to do that at that time. So that's in our policy, but it's a brand new policy. So it didn't
Yeah.
go into effect for this CIP cycle, but it will be for the next CIP. And we asked specifically on that one project to look at it this time around.
And so my understanding was because that project is being pulled back and rescoped, they now want to have conversations. They're looking for some technical assistance on how to and what to add in infrastructure wise
Mhm.
into the scope of the project. And so John, being the chair of this committee, I kind of directed
Okay.
him. I said, start with John.
Reach
I might
out.
call Katrina.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll get in on a Zoom with you. That sounds great. And can I add one more thing to that while you're thinking about the solar?
Yeah.
One of the things we really like to think about is who is missing out on some of these opportunities. And often it's people that live in apartments and condos that don't have access to an EV charger because of our zoning ordinances or because of how it's hard to do that yourself. So teachers are people that would absolutely love to have the opportunity to charge at work. So what a great place. You put a parking lot in, you've got the free solar, they can charge during the day. That's brilliant. And that adds a lot of value to that person because they can get their charging done without having to own it in their own home.
Other questions that people have and all.
I was going to say also that's something that we should think about, because I did have a resident reach out to me that lives in a condominium complex. And the question was, does the city have any space where they would consider putting an array that they can buy into or tap into some way or another? Or that they can invest somehow. They just don't have the property to do it.
Right. And
So-
that's the biggest challenge. And it not having a level 3 charger is going to hold you back so much from other communities. And hopefully that will start changing soon. But those level 3s really, when somebody, even if you have an EV charger and you, I don't know, somebody's working on your house and you can't charge that day, or who knows what reason you can't use yours. It's so nice to have a place you can go 30 minutes, you can get charged. And then people that are looking for the quicker charge. But yes, having a place that they can have, especially at their home, is the best. That's the easiest because you can charge when you're home. But anywhere that they can get charged on.
But our
Walking distance.
constituent down on Tide Watch had said there's about 200 condominiums down there.
Yeah.
150.
Yep.
And she was saying, we want our own solar. We don't have any place to put it.
Hmm,
They're right by the landfill.
Yes,
And
Brilliant.
by the Jones Avenue.
that was the question. Well, told them they could do, roofs would be the easiest thing because it's behind the meter. But,
There's a lot of roofs.
and there are a lot of roofs, but I think that they're thinking, where can we help invest in a bigger project? And can we get involved in a project at a place like Jones Avenue?
Right, and they were actually wondering if they could put a 240 line underneath
mm, yep.
the ground and I don't know how you could make a micro solar grid or something, but
Absolutely worth looking into. And maybe this is one of those things where you can be a leader. You can come up with think of some new ways that you can really supply, because you have a very different situation in a lot of towns I work with, where you have so many people in a small space that don't have access to their own garage. This is a really good opportunity.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Have you seen any public-private partnerships within towns yet around solar or renewables?
And what do you mean? And like, there's so many different ways that you can work.
So
Sure.
not in New Hampshire, but I for my part of my job, I help corporate buyers
Mhm.
purchase tax equity in
Okay.
developing community solar. Like Maine allows for that. I don't think that this is the same case in New Hampshire, given the community solar
Mhm.
legislation. But I'm just curious from an innovative funding standpoint, if that is a barrier in some of the towns, have they come up with creative ways to
Yeah.
create public-private
So
partnerships?
I think there's definitely different levels of how much a community can commit, how much bandwidth they had, and how much they can work with something. So if a town is just like, we don't want to do any of this stuff, we're not interested at all, don't talk to us about solar. That's a great town to say, hey, do you just want to buy the energy and we're just going to give you some savings? And that's great. Anyone with a little bit more gumption to do a little more work, you might want to think about how they could maybe benefit a little bit more. A community like Portsmouth, I would again really encourage you to own your arrays if you can. What tends to happen is right now there's a lot of tax incentive available, and if you buy into a community solar project, you're only getting a small portion of the savings, and now you've bought in for 5, 10, sometimes even 20 years. And now it's time to renew and you don't have any of that incentive. There's none of that available. The reason that those are such great projects is there is somebody that benefits. So that's great. Again, I think there's every system has the right buyer.
Mhm.
So I absolutely have towns that's going to be the perfect solution to. There's going to be places that want to build a big megawatt array, and they're going to need towns that are going to buy
Mhm.
from them. Community power is going to, CPC&H, they're going to need, that. Some organizations are very willing to say, you agree to buy from us, give us 90 days notice when you decide, you're going to make your own solar array. Great, no problem. You can go ahead and do that and you're off the contract. Most of them say, you've agreed to buy from us. It's going to be for this many years, which is going to sadly stunt the growth of some of the solar within that community.
Yeah.
So that's a really big picture, something that a committee would want to look into and really think about. But yeah.
Something that came up at that last, I passed over to the Energy Committee
Yes.
and those meetings. We're going to start joining those. But I did listen to the recording from the last one.
Mhm.
And it was fantastic because there's towns across the entire state that meet once a month. And they talk about their experiences. Right now, it was predominantly solar. And they talked about a few other things, but the last meeting was almost 100% solar. And something that, there's some of the North Country, because
Melissa was the one presenting. Yeah.
Erlander's
Yeah.
up there,
Yeah.
right? She's been pushing that hard. But, some of them have done quite a bit of solar
Yeah.
up there. And so some of those towns on the call, they were giving everybody else advice.
Yes.
And they said, pick a small project,
Mhm.
pick a small solar project. Don't dive into the deep end.
Mhm.
And they said, pick a small one and then develop a pipeline
Mhm.
for solar projects for your municipality.
Yep.
But get that first one under your belt and get some experience.
Yep.
And I thought, wow, that's,
Yeah.
there's some people,
Yeah.
there's some resources to really
Yes.
draw from.
And they can tell you about successes and failures. So that was the small solar, and I'll be presenting large solar at the
Yeah.
next one. So you'll have to hear me again, sorry.
Oh, yeah, I thought you
Yeah, and something also to be aware of, there's the town of Sandwich is really sad because they had worked for 2 years on a solar array and they lost by 30 votes. And sometimes understanding how important it is to bring your community along with you, how vital it is that everyone understands what you're doing, why you're doing it, asking questions, involving them. I think that's so important every step of the way on all these projects.
Right, and it is an advantage to have a council, city manager, form of government.
Yes,
Sense that not everything is an all town meeting decision.
correct. But on the other hand, it's also nice to make sure that everyone is backing it and excited about it too. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
No, we had to do that with community power. We had
absolutely.
skeptics.
Yeah.
Other questions for
Yep.
Katrina?
So I have a whole bunch of questions. because
Great.
You rattled off a whole bunch of things.
I watched all
not
your meetings
of
for a
which
while.
I'm really familiar with,
Okay.
but I'd like you to clarify some
Great.
things. For example, tell me what a solar garden is.
Okay.
Start with-
So a solar garden is a type of solar where individuals can buy into the garden. And so then they can, it's more of a individual product. I don't know how to explain that more. So if you can't put solar on your roof, but you still want to buy solar power, you can
Okay.
connect with that.
Is that any different with community solar then? A community solar project versus it's
Yeah.
a smaller version of it?
There's-
What?
There, this is the thing that I am stressing so much. We need names that don't sound the same.
Yeah.
Mm.
Community power, community solar, what does that mean? So that's something I am actually working on, trying to figure out how we can make those names very clear so that everyone can visualize when I'm saying a word, what am I
So if
talking
I
about?
put up a tracker in my backyard, is that a solar garden?
No, that is individual solar.
Oh, okay.
And yeah.
But if I do it with others, it's. a solar
So what
garden?
you could do is you could put up a big tracker in your yard. You might not use all of that
Okay.
tracker. And you could have a solar garden where other people can get some of the incentive. They can buy into that solar if you're making more than you need.
Okay.
And there's a bunch of sets of rules around that. And there's a bunch of sets of how you do that, who's the broker, all that sort of thing.
Okay.
does that tie into community net metering?
Yeah,
We
because
need-
they'll,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I-
well, they, no,
Terminology.
Yeah.
do you agree? Like, this makes no sense that we should be able to know.
Sorry,
So
Peter, I didn't-
No, yeah, you're
I'm
absolutely
gonna put
right.
that as a part of my job.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely
Let's
right.
get
I
some
mean,
words.
that's what I'm trying to clarify.
Yeah,
What are these
confusing.
things and
Right,
why are they different and
right,
what's different between this and this?
right.
Uh,
We can't even technically do that now, though, because so Peter and I have solar on our house, but we can't be a part of community power because we're net metered customers right now. So how do we navigate that, given this weird space we're in where we're being
Yeah.
held hostage?
So it's interesting. Some people have said that they're so frustrated because the net metering rates, depending on how they purchased and everything, aren't as great. And they're asking, can I just still be part of community power when I purchase power? And so that's actually an option down the road. That I think is a very temporary problem. It's one it's a pinch point
Yeah.
that we just haven't been able to
it's
get the
been a
policy on.
long temporary problem.
Yes, yes, it has. It
Temporary
has.
problem.
Biggest champions are
Yeah,
stuck.
this was long
with
ago.
Eversource, yeah.
Right.
I mean, I'm out of the legislature now, but I voted for that bill.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
Still not happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's going on?
And that's a great, that side is the policy side.
Yeah.
It's- I think the great thing about my job is that the really like, I can send to somebody else.
I don't want to get bogged down in that, but
Let's
okay,
focus on
so,
the project
so
I
here's
can't
some
do
other
with you.
things. Okay, so, what about, I know you had said in the beginning,
Mhm.
the issue of whether we should be part of the sustainability group or separate from it,
Mhm.
or energy committee versus sustainability, or
Mhm.
is it a good idea to be together or not together? In my opinion, sustainability has a lot to do with energy too.
Mhm.
Not just resources of water or whatever infrastructure, but it's also has to do with energy demands
Mhm.
and they're connected to the climate change issues as well. So are you suggesting that they should be separate? Is that a better way of going about it or not?
Yeah.
I didn't quite, You seem to
Sure.
be saying both.
No,
one thing and the
definitely,
other.
definitely clearly saying they should be two separate
Two
groups.
separate groups.
And the reason is everyone wants to accomplish something while they
Mhm.
come to these meetings,
Okay.
as fun as it is to be together.
Yeah.
There's so much to do in each pocket. It's just an incredible amount. And to have both of
If
those
all
work together.
It's too much.
Now, many people, like in my town, that are on the sustainability committee are also on the energy committee. That's fine. They're often the same people. That's no problem. But the thing is, there are very specific things that we work on in energy
Mhm.
that are very energy focused. And then those can work hand in hand. You can absolutely do that, but they're going to just be different projects. And one of the things that I have found is that when you are sustainability, your focus is more on making use of what you have and making sure that you're not buying as much maybe new things, or you're trying to reuse, recycle. Unfortunately, some of the energy transition means you have to buy solar, you have to buy some new things. And so it's easier if you separate, you focus on what you need to focus on. And the goal is to reduce the use of energy and also reduce the use of plastics and create, things that create carbon and waste and all those things.
Okay, so one final question
Yep.
now is, and I'm very big on this issue of energy efficiency,
Mhm.
because I think the number one policy should always be first, reduce your energy demand. Before
100%.
we start talking about how
Always.
we get the energy, whether it's
Always.
renewable or fossil, whatever. First, you reduce your demand,
Mhm.
because when you do that, you discover that you might not need as much energy as you
Right.
thought you needed, because now we don't have as high a demand. So I'd like to see us in this community do a whole lot more in looking at all our citywide properties. One of the properties, which is not our property, Spinnaker Point facility, which we lease,
Mm.
desperately needs energy efficiency measures.
Yep.
And I've been told, okay, things have been done in the future, but if you go in there, there's so much more you can do. So I think that we should not leave that out of
Yeah.
the equation, because I think that's a very important step.
And I'll say this, in most towns, when I first meet, we start there. You guys have been doing this longer, and so I didn't go right there. But the first projects we actually do in most towns, it's not a solar array or a big thing like that. It's let's do an energy audit of all your buildings. And where can we save energy in all those buildings? Now let's look at your HVAC. Let's look at, and you start at all those points and you bring all the energy need down. You are going to expand that energy need, however, when you are adding electric HVAC instead of other ways. When you
Also
add
fuel.
more, when your police force becomes more electric vehicles, or you have electric vehicle buses, you will increase it. So you want to think about, it's kind of both sides. How do we reduce in every way possible? And then when we're transitioning, how do I make sure that we're creating our own energy there as much as possible?
Can I ask a question related to that?
Mhm.
We don't have a dedicated energy manager as a part of our city staff. And so having like that holistic look and having somebody follow up on some of the mechanisms that might help pay for this without pulling from the city budget, like performance contracting mechanisms. We're probably missing out on those sorts of opportunities. Have you worked with other towns to help get that resourced in one way or another? Or have you found programs that, like, the state level runs a whole performance contracting mechanism for state buildings? Have you seen like a town or city takedown version of that that could almost be managed by an ESCO selected through an RFP process or something? Like basically finding a way to resource it that
Yeah.
systemically versus just with like a energy audit, here are things, and hope we get that into the capital improvement plan.
Correct. It makes a lot of sense. I think one of the things that we've encouraged is spend some time showing your community where the savings happen. And then a lot of communities have been able to say, look how much money we've saved. That's how you can pay for this person. I haven't found other ways, necessarily to do that. But what you can do is that really targeted approach. And that's why I really often say to energy committees, think about maybe the maximum of 3 projects you want to work on, and then holistically, as much as possible, take into all the pieces of the puzzle and then bring that to your council. As we're talking about energy committees, I will also say another option, a little opt up for you, is an energy commission, because that is actually where we're finding that you have even more say. I know in our town, we just switched from a committee to commission. A commission is you shall be at meetings, you shall be included. A committee is you may just the difference of that. And you have more things that the city is responsible to share with you. You have to get an update of all the energy usage every year, that kind of thing. It's a little bit more inclusive, but you also have the ability to hold funds from year to year. I don't know in a city how that works. I'm guessing you lose them at the end of the year as other towns do. If you were to get, if the city said, we're going to give you $2,000 this year to work on energy projects and you used 1,500, most towns would find that they've lost the rest of that. So a commission would be able to hold on to. Okay, perfect. So that's an option to think about too, as you're linking more holistically. And then you could say, look, this is what we've been doing. This is where we're saving money. This is where we don't have the time and the power to do this. Could we work on someone? You can see the towns like Dover that have somebody who's really working on it, or Nashua, or some of the other ones that really have a person focused, how much faster they can run with projects and get things done.
Just to piggyback on your comment, I have said this before, but if you observe various properties that the city has, because we don't have an energy manager as such, things happen that are related to energy, that happen through the janitor, through the person who's there. Because somebody says, okay, we got a light
We do have a
bulb burned out.
facilities manager, so
Excuse me?
we do have a facilities manager, so it's not that.
Yeah,
that-
facilities manager, but that's not an energy
but
manager.
It's all the buildings, so it's
Yes,
not-
but these people are not trained for energy efficiency. They're just trained for the facility management. A good example is Spinnaker Point. I've seen crazy stuff being done over there. I don't know why. And there's no accountability for that as far as what we know here as a group. So what I'm suggesting is if we have an energy committee, anytime the city does any type of relamping, HVAC system, whatever it is, it's not to say the energy committee should have veto rights over it, but we should know about it. We should have some input to say, why don't you install this and this? I heard, for example, at the Spinnaker Point Gym, instead of installing LED lighting in the gym, they installed old style lighting because that was cheaper. Well, is it really cheaper to operate? Is it really cheaper price wise with the credits you can get? I don't know, but
Mhm.
somebody has to bring that to us and say, this is what we're planning to
I
do.
was just pointing out that we have a facilities manager.
Yes, you
not
do.
Just janitors making decisions.
Mhm.
Well, I get it. I get it. And
Maybe that's for now.
Step in the right direction.
But
Yeah.
in that vein, if we do decide to have an energy committee, I think that committee should know about what's going on the energy front.
Mhm.
I
And
think the whole topic of how the city itself, the municipal government,
yes,
lowers its carbon footprint is a whole program of work.
yes, and that's directly connected to energy uses.
And as you say, Katrin, that's where you start in many
Mhm.
cases.
Has the idea of energy manager come up?
I don't know, we have had an ESCO contract in the past, and I don't know where that is now, but
Yeah, I remember that
for
one.
quite a few years.
For,
And a certain part of what DPW does.
And something that we do in a little town like we have, and maybe it's something you could do here too, is that we have one person that's tasked to communicate with the maintenance director or whoever it is in charge and say, here's some things, where are some areas that you're thinking about some new things or whatever, or we noticed, lighting or it's awfully breezy when I go to whatever. Can we help you to look up cost effective things or do some of the research for you so that when you're replacing that's kind of that weight is off of that one person and that you can have more energy efficiency. And we've had a lot of luck with that because it's opening up that door of communication, but you're not flooding them with every single person's random idea. It's you talk about it together, one person, and then they have that meet.
But here's also a simple example from Spinnaker Point on energy efficiency and aesthetics. It's one thing to say I'm putting in something that's really a little best energy efficiency there is, but it's ugly. Okay, it looks that bad. They relamped a certain part of the lobby. Some of the lights on the ceiling are bluish lights. The other ones are warm white. It looks bad. Maybe they consume the same energy. I don't know. But what I'm pointing out is that even changing a light bulb these days is not as simple because you're trying to match the color temperature as well as the efficiency. And that's where I'm saying somebody more deeply involved in the energy aspect of it has to also look at the aesthetics of it because people will accept it more if it's aesthetically pleasing. Okay.
I think let's hold this idea of an energy manager for future discussion.
Yeah. Sure.
And and I'm sensitive to the fact that two of our working groups have come prepared tonight, and I want to give them time.
Yeah.
So why don't you just hang with us? Katrina?
I would love that. I'll just take notes.
And we're gonna move on to Tracy and your work on energy efficiency block grants. Tom, I think you helped on that.
Yeah.
Counselor Cook.
Yeah, we were able to have a nice call. Peter sat in, so it was, Tom Rooney, Peter, Counselor Cook couldn't make it at the last minute, and 3 people from New Hampshire DES. And I'll kind of explain, what we talked about were everyone's referring to them as CPRG grants. They're EPA, part of the EPA Inflation Reduction Act funds, climate pollution reduction grants. These 3 people we spoke with, and I don't have their names and titles up, are very new to the organization. A lot of funding was just brought in the last year, and we'll see that. So they were all new, but they're very anxious to hear what we want to work on. So just background on the grants. It's 5 billion allotted for states, local governments to implement ambitious plans for reducing GHG emissions. 6 sectors. I focused on buildings because we were looking specifically at energy efficiency and looking to accelerate work to reduce environmental impacts, particularly low income. And Justice 40 is part of the Inflation Reduction Act. 40% of many of these project funds are meant to benefit LIDAC communities, low income, disadvantaged communities. And there's a map and there's a tool that you can go and look at. For Rockingham County, the way the grant was written, these block units or geographies are what they look at. And we had Rockingham County would have about 15% of the block grants. But if you look at it in terms of population, which I think we should encourage the state to look at, we had 23% of the population in Rockingham County. So we could be eligible for much more of a cut of initial funding. All right, the next, timeline. Thank you. So 2022, it was announced, competitive money was given to states to come up with these plans. So that's why these 3 people were hired, because a lot of money was given out. New Hampshire got $3 million to develop this first round of plan, which was due March 1st. A month later, the implementation grant plan was due. So they just completed how they would roll this plan out. I don't think that's public yet. I didn't see it published, but when I spoke with New Hampshire DES, they did get it in on time. And then the next steps that we would want to think about if we are going to get involved are the DES would just like letters of support from interested parties, and that would just be to say to the governor and other folks that you're supportive of these funds being taken. Sounds crazy. I'm working in Texas, and Texas applied for 100 million for plugging wells, and not enough states applied. They ended up getting 134 million, but there was a big lag in taking that money because of DEI and some language that they were not happy with. So it is important to support those grants. So just next steps for information. In July, New Hampshire DES said they'd like to come and speak with us or get in touch with us to, they'll have a better idea if they're getting funds for the things that they've applied to. And then the grants end, they said 2027. I've heard 5 years. in any case, this money has to be spent very quickly. The funds are gonna be distributed, spent, and then reported on. It's not like this money is gonna be around for 10 years. So, then the next slide, this is information that, they just sent over today. This is from the implementation grant they just submitted, so just under 50 million. I don't know why they just under 50 million.
It's a
Um,
lot better when you save a dollar.
It does.
Yeah. And over these 6 measures, the ones in red are the ones that municipalities can apply for. Measure 1 is for pre-weatherization and weatherization. So pre-weatherization would be if you have someone with a mobile home or an older home that doesn't have the structure that's in good enough shape to take weatherization. It does that preliminary work so that the structure can then get weatherized. Those will be probably administered by a contractor, so not directly through municipalities, but we could certainly benefit from that. EV equipment is measure 2. Measure 3, public transportation, again, EVs.
That's exciting. That's, I can see some,
It says vehicle supply equipment. Is that charging infrastructure? Like the purchase of charging infrastructure is included in that?
Very often now, yeah.
I believe so, but I
Yeah.
don't know. We'd have to check. The people we spoke with were not actually the transportation people. They said that's another group, so we could,
Okay.
we could
Explore that.
get them.
It's
um,
been including it in most of the grants, so I would think so.
Okay, and then energy efficiency and, systems at drinking water, wastewater.
That's like
Mm.
perfection.
Right?
What our update's gonna be.
Yay.
And yeah, I guess that was it. So waste reduction, diversion, recycling, and then workforce development. Again, that's not something municipalities will be able to apply for directly.
we just look back. I mean, there's some real gems in there.
Mm.
I mean, in a state that has no support for public transportation. We wanted to look at a loop shuttle or something and get a subsidy to. That is intriguing to me. And then reducing our energy usage on the sewer plants and water plants. Who could argue with that?
Mhm.
Excellent.
So these next slides go through some of the background that the folks from DES explained on the phone call. And this was before they got the grant money, so that previous slide is what they put in for, but this was what they were expecting they might get. So just a breakdown of, where the funds would go. These are different programs, pre-weatherization and weatherization. Those would be subawards to municipals and contractors or profit companies. The New England Heat Pump Transformation is a program that they are involved in as a coalition. So a lot of this money, the DOE doesn't want 100, 1,000 grants to manage, so they've encouraged everything to be done by coalitions. And you're limited in the number of coalitions you can be involved in. So this is a very large one. This would be 500 million for heat pumps. It's a coalition with, I think, 12 or 13 states, and Connecticut is the lead party on that. If that goes through, I believe they referenced, and Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, a California plan that it would
Yep.
mirror. There's a successful California plan.
Yeah.
They would model it after that.
What does that plan do? Is it rebating heat pumps? Is it?
Yeah, so they would hire a third party contractor to administer, and then it would be, incentives for heat pump installations and they referenced, I think it was clean heat maybe. I'm not sure I did write that down. I don't have it with me. Yeah, the program that we can let you know, you may be familiar with it.
It's like California heat pumps or something.
Yeah, yeah, but that's awesome.
Yes, okay, this one, they didn't explain a lot about, they didn't mention it. So again, EV equipment at wastewater facilities and, connections to landfills. Again, in my experience, all this funding is being pushed out very quickly. Like you see, they have 3 people they hired, a few months ago and putting this in place. So I think a lot of the details aren't worked out and they'll be very happy to have communities that have a plan in place or can get a plan in place quickly on how they would roll it out would be very helpful. And next, okay, this is an interesting one. So this is for resiliency, and this again is a coalition of 13 states that we are also, New Hampshire is putting in for 500 million total. They expect the award to New Hampshire would probably be around 30 million. And this is to provide resiliency for storms. So if there's, if we have a power outage, it would be to have a backup supply, battery storage at a facility like the school or the city hall to have residents and just have a safe place for the people who need it most. Peter, is that what you got from that? I think your wheels were probably spinning as he was talking about that.
Well, the whole battery storage and there was also talk about peak shaving with that battery storage too, so. Could be deployed at treatment plant or wastewater treatment plant or drinking water treatment plant. And maybe save some money along the way, but then have a backup that could be used.
Which measure was this? This is one of the measures? Or is this not
One of the
tied?
coalitions that,
This is one of the coalitions, like,
Okay.
he just sent the breakdown today for that 50 million. I believe this is separate. This is
Okay.
a separate.
This is not one of those measures that we went through on a previous
I
slide.
believe so. Yeah,
Okay.
that would make sense because the 30 million is,
yeah, because this is all resiliency.
yeah,
And that was all, was
so
Yeah.
separate. Okay, so. Are there any questions on, I know I ran through that quickly and it's probably very high level and I'm just trying to understand it myself, but any questions?
That first pot of money. The letters that we need to submit by July, what needs to be included in that letter? So that would come from municipalities. And we would say we're interested in tapping these funds. Do we have to provide details around projects or just ideas for projects? What are they requiring?
We can give you details as we're working on that too, because I know we helped write the first part of that, of the program. And so definitely can help you know what they're looking for specifically as we get a little closer to the date.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
They actually sent out templates, which I
Yeah,
can send you as well.
Okay,
Perfect.
For what and I think, they weren't looking for specific plans. And you can answer this better than I can probably, but at least from the work I'm doing in Texas. We've been working on a plan for a year
Mhm.
and this has come out. So we're in the best position to get
Yes.
those funds because we have a plan in
Shovel
place.
ready. Yep.
We have a network developed.
Yep.
We're ready to go.
Mhm.
So if Portsmouth does that. they
Yes.
Get their plan in place, they're ready to go. I think there's a better
Yep.
opportunity to get funding.
And we've been doing a lot of the work on the other side. So last year got a grant for working on these resiliency buildings. We've been doing a deep dive into the batteries. What type of systems do you use? How do you do that for these resiliency centers? So yeah, we'll definitely partner with you on these topics.
But we would need to decide. Wouldn't we need to decide? What we want to build a plan around? Is it electric vehicles? Is it transportation? Is it reducing energy consumption at our municipal buildings? What are What's the menu?
There's some things that are gonna self-limit. It's interesting. So we've been trying in my town to buy just an EV Bobcat. Seems simple. We had 90% grant we could get. It would be great. We couldn't get to that because all of the EV Bobcats were promised by Bobcat to California because their rules are so much stricter. And so they have this big contract. So as much as I'd love to say go for that, make sure there's something you can buy. So then you look, okay, so some things are going to self-limit and then you can go through that and then you really look at where your energy use is and what is, what's the base expense to Portsmouth? Where can you save the most money? What are the, what's the most energy use? That kind of thing. Prioritize
Really interesting.
about,
The supply chain, I mean, if you want to, if you're not getting,
don't bother barking down yeah, not going to help.
so I think letters of support would be fairly straightforward and they'll let us know. But getting a plan in place and figuring out where to put your effort is.
Counselor?
Critical. I was going to say, I think that we have several areas that we can tackle
Mm.
as a city. And some of those things come to this committee, others go elsewhere.
Perfect.
And I did mention at the last meeting that I've been working for about a year with the legal department on weatherization, heat pump, a trust for people who are lower income, and how to set that up and how to manage it. So I think that's something that we can do on that weatherization side, but that seems like a very small piece of the puzzle. But we're also working on, currently the council's been working on a skip the stuff policy with the sustainability committee,
Mm.
which is a waste reduction effort. So we have some things that's, if we adopt as a policy, we'll be ready to adopt as an ordinance if we get funding that will help fund the health department to do the adequate inspections to do that. So we have several of these things, I feel like, kind of in the works.
Right,
But
for Germany.
Who's in
Right.
charge of each project? Yeah.
right, but the challenge we always have is having staffing hours to implement them,
Mhm.
and there's a cost associated with that. So you always have to say, can we implement this without the grant funding? So if we get the grant funding, we have some things ready to kind of go.
But like in terms of putting together the plan that would hopefully solidify the likelihood of us getting the funding, is it worth thinking about, okay, from those 5 pools of funds, who would be willing to serve as a point person for transport? Is that somebody on this, I don't know what committee? For maybe that is energy. I mean,
Yeah.
is that technically, I don't know if that's even.
Depends, what's the transport for? So that's the biggest thing. If it's public transport, that's gonna be probably one group of people. If it's your fleet, maybe you're thinking of the Chevy Blazer or whatever.
Yeah.
For the police, like, I think it depends on which department that's into.
So that's interesting. If you think about like, for each of those measures, do we have something for it?
Mm.
And who would be a point person for each? And could there be, like, are there joint, I don't know how it works, but could there be like joint committee
Yeah.
groups to like prepare the plan?
Yeah.
For at
Yeah.
least the letter for July.
There
Like
could
I
be
know
working
on that
groups.
renewable energy one on wastewater treatment, like that will come up with us now. I think
Yeah.
we'd probably say like, oh, with our little solar group or renewable energy group that we could come up with
Mhm.
something related to that.
I think for transportation, we would want to hit up the TCAT group and Bill Lyons.
Yeah.
For assistance there.
Mhm.
Yeah. Right.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and you can also point to a lot of measures in the climate action plan. Time July comes around, you'll be able to have a
Mhm.
bunch of things identified that would go right to that.
Is that bus loop idea,
Mm.
if that was an electric vehicle? That would
Sure.
add additional
Sure.
heft to it.
That's a great question. And that's where it's good to look into what are the options? How do people like them? I know Coast has been
Right,
working with
right.
some, and so yeah, is there a bus that we would want to get? And that way you already have a step ahead. Is this worth it?
Could you even buy one?
That's one of the biggest problems. And then isn't it reliable? So, yeah, so that's that's what the energy committee do, is really that deep dive on the technicalities and then communicate with the department.
They're buying an electric trash truck.
Yeah,
They said it's like 18 months.
yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's happening fast. People want them now, and there's only so many.
So can we just go back and look at those areas that we could build plans around? Now, this is a wish list, or this is what they think about?
This is what New Hampshire included in their grant that the implementation grant, which they just filed April 1st. So this is what they have targeted for the state for funds.
And didn't it come out of their priority climate action plan?
It
They-
did, and then they.
So they kind of have that roadmap in place. for-
Right, and then they did another plan that was due March 1st, the grant plan, and then this was the implementation plan, so. 3 plans that they built.
Tracy, one thing for the minutes, didn't you say that the weatherization was not something that municipalities would be
Right. It's not
involved
been
in?
read.
As you,
Right, it's not,
So-
well, it's not that they wouldn't be involved in, but it's not one that they would directly apply for. So there will probably be programs that residents can take advantage of, but it wouldn't be.
State run.
just
Be a
in
state
terms of the
yeah.
letters of support, I'm just clarifying for the
Correct.
minutes, whether that's something that's a category that there would be a letter of support from the city, or we're not eligible.
I think that's more individual.
I don't know, my guess is the letter of support will say that we're in favor of taking these funds and deploying them. And I don't think we'll need to be very specific, but more just supportive that we can use these. We have committees and, sustainability managers and a climate action plan, and we're ready to implement the plan, spend the money.
Would the Portsmouth Housing Authority come under that? Is that,
They would. Well, if, as you say, there's a social justice component to this.
Mhm.
So the housing authority would have a
Mhm.
better case to
Mhm.
argue. Because they've got low income tenants, and residents.
I think so. I couldn't find the implementation. I don't think it's public yet, but that would be probably detailed in there, and we should look for that.
That's like New Hampshire saves kind of, and more individual for sure.
yeah, because we were saying the municipality would not be involved in this,
Yeah.
but Portsmouth Housing Authority is part of our municipality.
Mhm.
Now, the one challenge I see though with that is that we should encourage the state not to administer it in the same way that it does New Hampshire Saves, because that requires upfront investment, and from individuals who are low income. It's
Yes,
very difficult to do.
Yeah.
So it's much easier to get a grant
that'd be great.
outside.
I got one question of clarification. My understanding was the Portsmouth Housing Authority is not tied to the city of Portsmouth. The city of Portsmouth does not manage or is not responsible for the Portsmouth Housing Authority. That's a completely separate
It's
entity.
a separate nonprofit.
Yeah, okay, good.
However, the mayor appoints the board members.
Okay,
But other than that, it's a separate nonprofit with its own balance sheet and its own board of directors and its own mission. It uses tax credits to get investors to build affordable housing.
yeah. We for sure could provide them some guidance or if, point them in the right direction. Like Clean Energy New Hampshire has this awesome Seacoast Circuit Rider and there's other resources.
You're gonna regret ever
Right, that-
coming to this. meeting.
I am not. I am so glad to be here. I'm so glad to be here. So
So-
I agree. I think that you highlighted the 3 that really are gonna be your municipal
Well,
focus.
as we know, Ben D'Antonio has been, and Kevin Surratt have been working on the data hub.
Hmm.
We talked about it at the last meeting.
And I did hear back, will write a letter of support. He's interested.
Yes.
And has a value in that.
So this is a program where the Department of Energy wants to fund data hubs where Eversource and the other utilities will export all the customer information
Yeah, that'd be great.
so that for an apartment building,
Mhm.
somebody wants to make it energy efficient, can see all the load of the building.
I heard you
It's
guys talking about it.
invisible right now.
Yeah.
So Ben, who's not here tonight, is volunteered to help us
That'd be great.
after that. And Kevin.
Getting information is one of the hardest things to do, and it doesn't need to be that hard. Be great.
And our perfect use case.
Except
is-
for solar.
Perfect use case is Portsmouth Housing.
Yeah, perfect.
So we're working on that.
Going back to getting the plan for the different measures, though,
Yes.
seems like measures 2 and 4 are pretty clearly within our wheelhouse.
Yeah, I just realized when I looked at it, they're talking about EVSE, so just electric vehicle supply equipment, not actual EVs. So that is just your infrastructures. That's your level 3s, your level 2s.
Yep. So, wait, you're saying it is the charging?
It's, yeah, so
infrastructure
EVSE is just the equipment, not the actual vehicles.
So probably those two are clearly within our purview.
That's gonna be
Um,
ordinances you want to work on to get ready for that.
Yeah, which Kate and I definitely want to chat with you afterwards,
Yeah.
because that's, you'll hear, that's on my homework
Perfect.
list.
Perfect.
For,
Coming soon.
Yeah, coming at our next council meeting.
Yay.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, no way.
Okay.
Awesome.
Exciting.
These are spinning, literally. So transport though, Kate, you were saying that was,
There's a group, a transportation group that's kind of a community local subgroup. They're not really directly affiliated with the city, but often report to sustainability called TCAG, TCAG. And I mentioned Bill Lyons because he was a transportation engineer and he's a member of that committee. He's one of the people who first was talking about the loop idea. of transportation.
Yes. Yes.
So
And there's a lot of opportunity in that. And it also is critical to supporting what we want to do with housing.
yeah, they sit on
So-
sustainability, the majority of that group, I think.
I don't know who else is in it besides Bill.
That Savers also in, I believe, like it's a conglomeration of the transportation. Biking group. There's someone else on sustainability that also sits on it.
and then the waste diversion piece was also, you were saying, part of the sustainability committee work right now too. Yeah, so maybe between those two groups, we need to get
Mm.
two people together to like make a
Keep going.
wish list.
Keep going.
Just making a suggestion.
Mhm.
Herb, you used to be on the sustainability committee, but no longer, right?
No longer.
Okay. Does anybody else?
But
go?
Peter is involved in the sustainability committee.
Yeah,
Hey, Tomei and I are staff support for them.
would you serve as a point of contact and discuss this and create a wish list, or do you need a committee member to support you?
I mean, to support the grant, you're just looking for a letter of support that,
Well,
We're
I
talking
think
about-
what we want to probably do is, to Tracy's point, we need to start thinking about a plan. So yeah, it's not hard to write a letter of interest for July, but if we want to realistically get funds and have a place for them, where it could be implemented in a fast manner, because it sounds like the speed of this money is quite fast. That we probably actually need to have at least 2 individuals spearheading a plan related to measures 2 through 5, if we want to go after.
If
portion
I'm,
of that.
if I'm following what you're saying, and I think Betsy is, and this is what we were talking about here was that if we're gonna get the funds,
Mhm.
we better have a plan that
Mhm.
we could go execute on. And what you're talking about is, assigning different people, different groups
Mhm.
to go develop those plans.
Yeah, it seems like, well, if I heard what you were saying correctly, Kate, we've got people working on these things. Probably needs to be coordinated and lumped together to create a plan.
And think about all the other towns doing the same work. So maybe a way to do that is to look together and do some of your regional planning commission connecting.
No, that I'm happy to work on some of the waste reduction because that's what I'm working on right now there's a plastics group that was part of the sustainability, kind of separate, but I'm still working with them on an ordinance. Well, it's not an ordinance now, it's a policy.
Right.
That hopefully will be an ordinance, but we need funding to do it.
I guess the question I'd have is, where's the funding gonna come to? If the funding's gonna come to the city, then it would have to be a plan that the city could then receive the money and then distribute it. There would have to be infrastructure in the city to do that.
Right.
If it's gonna come to a nonprofit in the community or a group in the community, then that's the place. So that planning process could identify those things.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
Yeah, these are
It's
municipalities.
gotta be the city, yeah.
yeah, if it's going straight to
Everything is right at
municipality,
municipality.
then the trick is gonna be who's gonna do the work to spend the money to do the projects. And so that might be in the plan, like hire a contractor to do this or that kind of thing. So,
But if, Peter, if we had a couple of volunteers as a working group on these 2 through 5. Coupled with a staff person. So the citizens could set the priorities, these are the things we want to go after. These are the things we envision and we'd have to have a staff person translate that into an application.
yeah, and then you'd have to bring it to the council if you're gonna receive the funds.
Yep.
Take the money and then the staff support to,
To implement.
how to implement it.
Would you need council approval to even request the funds?
Not necessarily. Some grant people require that you have to get you apply for and accept.
It's always stronger if you do them.
It's nice if they know in advance, but
Yeah.
It says support and expand. Don't you currently have some public transportation options and who is in charge of that?
post.
Okay, so that might be also a
Yep.
piece of the puzzle.
Yep.
Who,
Well, would Bill Lyons be willing to spearhead this since he's working on the transportation loop? And of course, the transportation loop, the obvious connection is it would connect into the coast network. Otherwise, why, you have it there already. So
I'm just wondering how far out we can go with all this. Is this,
What do you mean, how far out?
well, is the state's gonna receive the money and give it out? How much money at the end of the day? There's 5 million to the whole state?
This is what they put in.
In that measure 3, I'm just looking at.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
5
yeah.
million to the whole state, so we
Yeah.
might only get a small portion of that,
Yeah.
right? So just wondering how much, effort we want to put on it before will we know, further along that we're gonna have a chance at it.
Mhm.
That's not a lot of funding for public transportation.
No,
Oh,
and Manchester will be in there swinging hard.
Well, right,
I'm sure.
there's a lot.
yeah, yeah.
Just
But-
something to keep in mind that, it's not all gonna flow to us.
But still, if you just get funding for some kind of design work or some kind of planning work, that sets the tone to use it later on. And also, like was mentioned, the people in the state, they're really just brand new novices at this now. They're just hoping to get some interest.
Right.
So yes, the big cities like Manchester and Nashua will be in there, but I'm sure they're going to be interested in spreading this a little further out than just as 2 big cities. And even if we get a small amount of money initially, I think would be worth starting somewhere.
Well, and then it's first come, first served.
Yeah,
too.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah, and if you have a good plan, it's gonna go.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Your
yeah.
plan might want to have levels. So depending upon what kind of funding you might get, you have a kind of an option 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. And that's the great thing about these is it lets you dare to dream a little bit. And then you could say, wow, we had this great idea. It's not going to be funded here, but oh, look at this grant. This is perfect. Or this prize. We're going to go for that.
so for transport, did I hear, Bill? I'm like, just Bill Lyons, is that the person?
Yes.
So I reach out to you, yeah.
Kate, you're gonna reach out to him or somebody
I
else?
can, if you, I'm happy to.
Or does somebody else want to?
Well,
Who's
our
from-
citywide neighborhood committee also discussed this bus loop plan. And one of the things that was suggested from some people is, why don't we kind of survey the neighborhoods, for example? How could this help them connect to the city? So not just like the inner city loop,
Mhm.
but how would this connect to the neighborhoods
Yeah.
that some of them feel less connected right now? So we wanted to do that as well to see, hey, what do you think? Would this help your neighborhood?
And that's a great point. I think if you, it's my personal opinion, if you show community engagement and that community has had a lot of input on this, I think that's
Makes a big
strong-
difference.
And it connects to the housing issue of people not living downtown, but living on the
Yes.
neighborhoods.
Mhm.
Right. And when we had the conversation, Counselor Cook, I did emphasize what you had said is that, yeah, we might have the same number of, these LIDAC communities, but it's really different for Portsmouth. Like, I believe it's a federal threshold, so that someone who lives in Portsmouth and someone who lives in Arkansas in, a very remote community, they're looking at the same dollar amount for poverty or low income, which, is so much more challenging.
Mhm.
So for transport, Peter, is it you and Bill?
Well, I'm willing to get involved with Bill. Yeah, if that helps. Yeah, sure.
Happy to reach out to him too.
Yeah. And
And then the,
he's keen to. First of all, he's one of them. He's a worldwide transportation consultant. He does projects all over the world. And
wow,
he was drawing a little shuttle loop and he said, I used to have 10 people who do this for me. But, um,
amazing.
but he's very interested in some kind of loop system for Portsmouth. Pulse transportation is really expensive. That's the barrier. So, but there's also a lot of use cases for visitors to Portsmouth who want to come here and not have a car. There's use cases for neighborhoods. There's use cases for apartment dwellers who don't want to have a car living close into the downtown.
Yeah,
Kids going to after school activities.
Sure.
Yeah.
You
that'd be
start to
great.
Put together all those use cases and you might even get some private sector support from hotels. That's been done in other
Right,
communities.
right.
Absolutely.
One of the barriers to, when Bill presented this to us, he presented us a lot of examples and where this is being done already. And we pointed out to him that some of these other states have all kinds of revenue flows they can make use of, whether it's a local tax, for example, in a city or a state
have a
tax
pillow
or something.
tax.
And we in New Hampshire have the detrimental
Indeed.
effect that the state is very limited in what money they can distribute. So having some federal money like this come in is a one-time opportunity.
Yeah, don't want to miss it.
Yeah.
In New Hampshire.
100%.
'Cause this is funding. Okay.
So the other ones up here, so the ENRE at wastewater treatment plant, Herb, is this is all
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
This-
If we've got some time tonight, I'll
Yes,
give
we're
a
gonna-
quick update on that. Yeah.
And then EV charging, so who's working on that?
That-
Is that like Josh?
So many people.
Or so, yeah.
There's so many groups working on
So
this.
Josh,
Here locally.
Josh
Yeah.
has been he's been the champion for a number of years now, right?
Yeah.
EV charging.
But I think we'll get an ordinance done.
Mhm.
No,
We're going to first reading.
Yes,
Yeah.
first reading.
We scheduled it for your next one.
So then it's implementation.
But this would be funds for, this could be
That's-
funds for
But that's the
implementation, right?
zoning allowing it, basically.
You're right. That's just so.
First step.
But we do have funding in the CAP budget for EV chargers every year. So we've had the funding sitting and we've done some stub outs in places.
And availability has been part of the problem. Can't get the chargers.
Mhm.
Again,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Which
Really?
chargers can't you get?
A charge point, I
What's in
called
the-
them
what's in the
once
bridge lot?
about a
What is the
charger.
Okay.
bridge lot?
And they call me every day asking about the charger for our condo building up at
Oh.
Sunday River.
It's funny.
So I can't, I'm like, that's so funny to hear you say that. They literally stalk me, like, do you want this?
But
Yeah, I think
that's the
not finding it
difference
was hard a few
between,
years
like,
ago.
Commercial, because I know Josh
Yeah.
had looked into, or somebody from the city had looked into purchasing. And the ones that they,
Like a year or two ago, that's very different than now.
yeah, this was,
Recent?
Josh gave an update not too long
Okay.
ago. It said it was still a backlog because there were some states that were gobbling them all up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're a little New
Definitely not
Hampshire, but
us.
should we tap Josh at least to be like, hey, there's this, do you think this
Yeah.
could help
Yeah.
based on what you've researched?
Yeah.
Okay. I can email him.
And if the lines are long, like get in line. That's a great,
Yeah.
so that you're ready when you're ready.
So we have people tagged for 2, 3, 4, and 5, right?
We have two.
Three, we
Three.
talked about, 4, we talked about, 5, we talked about, yep.
Thank you, Betsy. Could you give that to Stephanie for the notes?
Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
That's what I'm here for.
Great. She's on it.
She's got it.
She's on it. Other comments, questions,
Thank
the discussion around the good work that Tracy and Tom and Councilman Book did?
Outstanding.
Yeah, thank you
Outstanding
so
work.
much. Yeah.
A
Bravo.
lot of opportunity there, a lot of opportunity.
Oh, as Peter said, hopefully it doesn't get dispersed and, it's.
Yeah, we'll get some of it. Yeah.
But you know, you miss 100% of the pitches you never swing at.
Mhm.
So true. Community Solar Working Group.
Yeah.
Kick
I
us
could,
off.
I could kick us off. So my apologies. I was contagion last week and didn't get my notes into you. So I'm going to read the notes that we have. And Stephanie, I will send it to you. So you do not. And then we'll get into kind of like the 3 work streams that we landed on and do a deep dive into one where Herb has made a ton of progress and it's very timely considering the community block grant we just heard about. So we had a great conversation like just a few days after our last meeting, Peter, Herb, and I about what should the goals be for this sort of subcommittee. Katrin, you put it really well, like, what does community solar mean?
Mhm.
Everything is community. So we talked about a few different things, just so you know what we put in our purview before I dive into where we chose to focus. We talked about developing solar projects in the community to reduce our energy costs and greenhouse gas emissions. Could we just get an inventory of people who have solar in the city? Can we remove disincentives for solar? Should we focus only on municipal opportunities or should we look at residential too? The idea being whatever we do has to be equitable. We talked about, should we focus on, if we're going to deep dive into municipal, putting up solar arrays behind the meter? Should we evaluate how community solar could feed into CPNH? The big question is how can community solar benefit all the residents of Portsmouth? So where we landed after having like a big conversation about like all the things we possibly could do, we chose to focus on 3 buckets of work. One being education and networking. So let's help educate the community about how they can access solar today. So like Katrin,
Yeah.
this is like your playbook,
Yep.
what you can do right now.
Yes.
And so I think there's like, not a lot of consolidated information on this. For example, if you go to the Directory of State Incentives for Renewable Energy, you just see this like massive list that seems like, oh, there's a lot of incentives, but no real playbook for how different types of residents can access solar. So whether if you're in an apartment building, you don't own the apartment building, you have too many trees in your backyard. So doing some sort of community education around what's available. And that could include ownership. It could include buying more renewable power through CPCNH. It could be PPAs and rooftop leasing, and many things in between. We didn't have solar gardens on the list.
Well, that's one to add.
Yeah, we can add solar
There you go.
gardens to it. So I think Peter is tagged to do some follow-up on that, understanding research or understanding legislative limits and what's possible. And so yeah, again, Katrin, it seems like you're going to be an amazing resource.
Yeah, let's work together. Love it.
Okay, cool. Peter, did I get that right?
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Okay. Then there's this whole, so that's education, like here's what's possible. And then there's this piece around removing disincentives. And so we talked about things like the Historic District Commission, the fire chief, talking to,
Every town in New Hampshire. Yep.
yeah. Peter, probably this is tagged with me. So it's probably you and me having a conversation, but I also heard to reach out to Tom Morgan, who's a planner who does a lot of
Talk
research
to him
and
first.
talk
I'll
to
tell you everything I'm doing wrong and then you.
Awesome. I'll get a balanced point of view. I'm a Libra, so I'll go for both. Yeah, so just understanding like what are the things preventing solar from happening? one of the interesting things, Peter, you brought up that I never heard is like the solar bill of rights. So like people not being able to build up and shadow out your rooftop. I'd have loved to have that for my neighbor's trees.
That's a good one.
So I'm tagged to that. And one of the to-dos in here, I did reach out to the city of Lebanon. They were wonderful, got back to me right away, but scheduling some time with them, Tad and you, Peter, to just kind of create an inventory, like what disincentives exist, what's feasible to help remove so that we can bring down those barriers. And again, Katrin, I imagine you're going to be an amazing resource for.
Yeah, that's what we do.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Okay. So I can add you to my list too.
Absolutely.
All right, Herb and Peter, keep me honest. I'm moving into the last bucket of work we discussed. So again, first is education, networking. The second, and that will probably involve some programming with the community, maybe in combination with other committees. The second is removing disincentives, understanding what those are and coming up with a plan to remove those. That's me. And then the third piece was building a pipeline of municipal projects, which Herb has taken on. And
Nice.
so, Herb has actually done the most work this month.
Mhm.
And so you have a couple of things to share, some exciting opportunities that we
Yep.
could be exploring. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
And John, just to be aware of people's times, because I can be long-winded, so how many, do you want me to run through my few things in like 5 minutes?
5 minutes is good if you can
Okay.
do that.
I'll go as fast as I can.
Well,
Okay, so on the municipal side, using the playbook from others across the state, it's best to pick smaller projects to get started with and build a pipeline, a roadmap. So with that understood, I actually went a little further than solar, and I did a little work on the wind side. And so, I think there's an opportunity to look at wind out on the wastewater treatment plant on Pierce Island. So I reached out to UNH, some folks I know over there, and they connected me with the Island Institute up in Maine, if folks are familiar with them. And they connected me with NREL, with the National Renewable Energy Laboratory.
oh, out in
And-
Denver. Or Boulder,
And
yeah.
so the NREL folks up in Maine said, oh, hey, yeah, this is right up our alley. The gal I reached out to, she actually is the co-leader for the DOE's Wind Energy Technology Office, and specifically National Engagement Strategy on distributed wind. So she's like, you've gotten to the right person.
That's great.
Portsmouth out. He told me about one program in particular, a clean energy communities program. They have something called Expert Match, where they would provide the city of Portsmouth with technical assistance, 40 to 60 hours of technical support to go through and, for example, on Pierce Island to do a feasibility study. And I mean, these are some of the smartest people in the country when it comes to wind.
That's great.
And so, so I reached out to Peter Getz over an assistant DPW, and spoke to him.
Brian Getz.
Brian, yeah, sorry, not
Brian.
Peter.
You just
Thank
got
you.
turned into a
No,
couple
Peter
there.
Rice is the director.
Yeah, I combined Brian and Peter together. But yeah, so I reached out to Brian, I spoke to him, and he said, hey, yeah, let's, aware, there's some concerns about space and such out there. But DPW is getting ready to install some new technology out there, which is going to draw even more electricity. And, there's some resiliency questions about being on that island. And in future storms,
Mm,
the island is going to become 2 islands. You'll have Pierce Island actually being 2 islands and the water coming right across our swimming pool in the middle. And so, yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of opportunity for maybe some sort of small wind turbine or turbines out there that would supplement behind the meter.
Mhm.
What they have today. So what I propose is that between now and the next meeting, that our group here, our subgroup can, put together a proposal of how we would move forward, and present that to this committee first, but then present it to city council and city manager to say, here's a proposal to go do a feasibility study, which is done by the federal government. And they'll come back to us and give us recommendations. So that's my recommendation, is that between now and the next meeting, we'll build that proposal. That again would go to city manager and city council after we all review it.
How does that sound to everybody?
Is that good? Okay.
Yep.
Definitely reach out to our executive director too. He's done so much work with wind and would probably be able to give you some more. ideas,
Okay.
too.
Are you familiar with these folks, the Island, what is it?
Institute, you said?
Yeah, Jen,
Ellen
Jen
Institute?
CV
Uh,
is there, and she used to be
So
head of
funny.
Isla Shoals. She's
Oh,
one of my
what did she go there?
girlfriends.
Oh,
Yeah, and she moved there. She's their director of programs. Is that who you talked to there?
Oh, who is it again?
Jen CV?
Yeah,
Yeah, she's from, well,
yeah.
Kittery.
Yeah, I
same
got,
thing.
I got reached,
We won't go
yeah. Yeah, I was connected to Jen, and then Jen
Great.
connected me with Susan McDonald from Enro.
Yeah,
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah,
yeah,
Jen is crazy connected. She's also
Yeah.
an expert in getting massive amounts of grant money too, so
Yay.
she's a good
That's-
person to be connected
that's
to.
something that they had mentioned too, and that something that would come out of this expert match engagement
Mhm.
is the financial side, the funding side.
Key. Yep.
And I think, the waste treatment plant too, when you put the word resiliency in there,
Mhm.
may open up additional federal funding.
Yep.
For a project. So I think,
Especially where you are. Yep, absolutely.
yeah, okay, so that's one, and then the other one was municipal solar. There's a lot to talk about here, and
Yeah, there is.
and you and I will chat some more.
We have a lot of opportunities in this town.
But I know, I did speak to Brian too about this, and I pulled a list, I can't remember now, what is there, 198 properties that the city of Portsmouth owns within
Yes.
the city. So this is not other places like Madbury and stuff. And so I talked to Brian also about this, and I've had a couple conversations with him in the past, and he said, yeah, DPW, we're totally open to looking at and discussing opportunities. But there are Soul Smart is one, but then this other program here, there's opportunities to use federal resources to help lay out a plan for us on how to move forward and to look at all the opportunities. There's also there's some amazing resources out there on the federal side. The EPA has published, I don't know if you've seen this, for municipalities, they've published a roadmap.
Yep.
Of how a municipality goes about from cradle to grave, a solar project. And they have example RFIs, RFPs. I mean, it's just a really,
Yeah.
it's amazing
Great
what they
resource.
put together. So there are some great resources out there. Again, I'd say, my recommendation is between now and the next meeting is we can put it together a proposal on
Absolutely.
how we propose to move the municipality forward with, building out a pipeline of solar projects.
Excellent,
Yay.
excellent.
So,
And don't forget the battery backup.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
We have to add that in too.
That's where you get like the advanced stuff. That's good.
Yeah.
Peter, one thing that came up in my house, since you're on the Conservation Commission, which my husband is on, he was talking about, I'm gonna mess it up, but like marginal lands or like maybe offsetting development and the potential for community solar.
Mhm.
Like a lot of lands that,
I guess I would be worried about conservation lands as being an area where you want to put solar before you've done rooftop and parking lots.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Putting solar on a big conservation land. And marginal lands are lands that could be improved, I would say. So putting a solar array there prevents that development of more trees and wildlife and habitat and things like that.
I think, okay, I'm
So
gonna,
so I'm
I'm
worried,
gonna
a little
remember
bit
what
worried about
the,
your.
there's
What are you
something
talking about?
restoration related, and then there's like this whole other movement about solar and native species going hand in hand. So it's something in that vein. I'm bummed I didn't remember to
A
ask.
bunch
him
of
before.
research out about that, and there are ways that they can actually be beneficial, so
Yeah,
to look into.
something, it was something restoration related that you guys were looking at as a part of this training with the Conservation Commission in the last couple weeks. Anyways,
You mean the open space protection work they're doing?
I'm totally gonna mess it up and. I'm gonna
Well, they did a lot of
embarrass
work
myself.
with trying to protect other conservation lands in the city that the city doesn't already own. So trying to buy more conservation land with the conservation fund. I mean, I suppose there's opportunities where you could put a solar panel up on part of it and then protect part of it. So restore, use the funds to buy the land and then maybe you put solar and then restore another part of it if it's degraded, but I guess whenever the people start talking about putting solar on conservation lands, it makes me nervous because there's so little solar on parking lots and rooftops. Why
Right.
are we going there?
First,
Why not
yeah, yeah.
start at the parking lots and rooftops first?
Yeah.
Then look at conservation lands or marginal lands that haven't had that opportunity for restoration, but we also need trees. We need those carbon sinks.
Of
So
course, yeah.
that's where,
Yeah.
we're at, it creates impervious surface, it creates other conservation concerns. Certainly they're great when you have a ton of open space and conservation land in the community, but we don't really have that. We're like developed to the max and everything's expensive. So a solar farm in Portsmouth it's a big ask on conservation land, I think.
Katrin, how many acres for 5 megawatts?
So it's about 4 megawatts, 4 acres a megawatt, depending on the quality of the land.
But the guiding principles that I am holding tight on is, the first one is that, small is low risk and something that can be implemented
Oh,
quickly.
give you a little adventure risk taking here, though.
I-
That was a small town
But
saying that.
the quick implementation
With
too.
success, right?
Yeah, and the other thing is behind the meter.
Yes, that's the
Right.
key.
And, sure, we can look at open field property that the city has like Jones Ave. But then again, what's the direct benefit to the city of Portsmouth?
So the one other area to look, you're talking about cradle to grave. The city of Cambridge did 1,000 rooftops or all of Cambridge. They're trying to cover all the rooftops. I mean, what percentage do we have in Portsmouth of rooftop solar? How can we expand that also at the same time?
Are you talking about Massachusetts, though?
Yeah.
A lot of things happen in Massachusetts that would not
They
happen.
also have funding too. So
Yeah, that's
I
good.
think that's the idea behind the first two work streams we've outlined, this education component, like what can you all do
Mhm.
now?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
this is a part of,
But I think funding is there for that
Yes.
too. And why
Yeah.
not grab that funding and bring it to that conversation of here's what you can do now and here's the money to do it.
yep.
Yeah.
And then the second piece is like removing any disincentives that we can identify where,
Yeah. Well,
These
the
are-
HDC is talking about it right now.
are they really? Oh
That's
my gosh,
great.
I want to go in and
Right.
find out. Because as soon as
Probably-
they lose
they
their
probably
power,
will,
I'm
yeah.
gonna put more
Long
up on
after
my
you're
roof.
Yeah, I'm the person that's been questioning that, but that's because I think you can do both. But that's such a small percentage of the town. And I think what I struggle with is the majority of the houses in the town that aren't under the purview that you
Mhm.
see, so they don't have a barrier, don't have solar.
Why don't they have solar? Yeah,
And
that's the
so
question.
why
Yeah,
aren't they
why?
incentivized?
Exactly.
And so we have to be asking like ways to, how do we incentivize those who could easily tomorrow
Mhm.
put in a permit to put
Mhm.
solar on their homes?
Well,
Does
that goes back to your first workflow area of
Education.
education.
Yeah.
If we had a solar handbook for Portsmouth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's how you do residential solar.
And one thing just to be aware of is there can be predatory solar. So just making sure you're really
That can
helping.
help too. Yeah.
Yeah, you're really helping educate that population in a really great way because it's most often the people that have the least to lose, that are going to lose the most.
Yeah.
So I just have a little bit to report about this community solar,
Mhm.
if you want me to, Betsy.
Yeah.
Go for it, please.
And I have, basically, I was asked to look into the community solar, how does that work? And basically what differences there are between New Hampshire and, for example, Maine. So as much as I could find out, number one, currently New Hampshire has a limit for community solar of 1.5 megawatts, while Maine has no limit whatsoever for community solar. The other thing is, there are very few community solar projects right now happening. One of them, which is actually happening, is in Jaffrey. And Jaffrey is now a community solar project that is open for people to participate in. It's not for low-income people, okay? And I'll give you an example. So I asked them, for example, I use about 1,000 kilowatt hours per month of electricity. So if I were to try to buy that equivalent and basically offset my electric bill, there would be two components. One is a annual maintenance fee up for that facility, which would be like a 25-year commitment essentially. And that would be something like maybe $600, $25 a year or something like that for 25 years. But the biggest point is to buy into that amount of energy would cost $46,000. Now, there is a 30% tax credit, federal tax credit right now, so that brings that down to about 32,000. That's still a big chunk of change for most people, and it's expected that that investment pays back within like 12 years. So, you know, if you want to make that commitment and you have,
What does that mean? It pays back in 12 years?
well, the expected benefit you will get from this, after 12 years, you should be able to get that money back. You're saving every
I'm not
month
paying.
on your electricity bill, right? So you save
Yep.
that money.
Yep.
And in 12 years, you're expected to save over $32,000.
So that's
Roughly.
basically like a break even.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the
break-even
break-even
point.
point. After
Yeah.
that,
Putting
for the
solar
next
on your
12
roof is
years,
cheap.
you're gonna actually make another $32,000 that you're gonna,
Hopefully.
Right. But
That-
you gotta
that's the
come up with
hope.
like- Yeah.
Yeah, but as Betsy says, why not just put panels on your roof?
well, I mean,
Okay.
I just wanted to show you that's an
Yeah.
example that's currently
there's
being
our
done right
comparison.
now.
Hmm.
When people talk about community solar, and then there is other low-income community solar is also an option.
Mhm.
However, as far as I know, and I haven't found it yet, there are no actual projects in the works right yet. There talk about it and there might be even funding for it, but I didn't hear of any projects that are actually happening. So I assume what happens there is that there's some federal or state funding to offset the costs here so that people with lower income can actually buy into that at whatever share price they wish to participate.
Municipalities can go up to 5
Yeah, this,
megawatts though.
Yeah.
You were just talking about the residential as
Yeah.
1.5.
well, no, this was Jaffrey, the city of Jaffrey. So the city of Jaffrey has, it's a brownfield, it's a landfill that they're using. And they're developing it under a power purchase agreement, whatever it is, with Revision Energy. And it's open to anyone outside of the city. So it's doesn't have to be a resident of Jaffrey.
Okay. Anyone that's on the same electric company. So it has to
Yes,
be the
and
same.
you have to be on the same network for Eversource. Any Eversource customer anywhere in the state
Yeah.
can buy into this. Yeah, that's right.
Thank you for doing that research. So how would you size up the opportunity? Do you think there's much worth pursuing there or?
Well, I mean, this is something that Revision Energy owns. So it would be different if the municipality says, we're gonna pay for it ourselves.
Right.
And then we can decide how we're gonna distribute the costs. I mean, for example, you could see a municipality say, we want to invest some taxpayer funds in this to make it work. And in addition to that, there will be also people who participate at whatever percentage they like to participate, making it more affordable for residents to participate. And I would say in that case, you probably want Portsmouth residents to be able to do it, not anybody in the whole state.
Right.
You're going to be paying for it partially with taxpayer funds.
So going back to our focus areas, I'm thinking like education, remove disincentives, focus on municipal
Mhm.
behind the meter initiatives. Hearing what you just said, Peter, that still seems to
Yeah, go ahead.
make the most sense.
Yeah.
But Katrin, eventually,
Mhm.
as community power participants.
Yeah.
There will be a pool of funds that
Yeah.
each town can
Right.
get. And then it probably makes more
That's the-
sense to
bingo.
revisit.
Yes, this is
This-
not the program that you want to, like, that's Revision's going to go out and do
Yes,
they're reaching
that's
out.
fair.
You don't need to worry about that.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I would community power 100%. That's
because
bigger
when
than
we
that.
use those project funds, then we can feed back into
Bingo.
our own
Bingo.
program.
Yep, that's exactly the kind.
Revision came in here and they presented
Yes,
this, they, you know,
Yeah.
present, they wanted the, you know,
Oh,
hey, Portsmouth, city of Portsmouth, do you have land that we can
Yes, sure.
lease?
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
we want to do this.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
sure,
they're,
sure.
and they'll give you some money for it.
Yes.
and Peter, I think. well, Peter Britz, several of you had concerns about how long you're tied up,
Right,
how long you're tied up
Right.
in those deals.
Yeah.
It's like
right.
20 years minimum.
Yeah.
And
Well,
And also the
there's a
community.
lot of doing it.
The community coalition as a whole. If we get to the point and we start investing in projects, we have a lot of heft to drive down the costs of things at that point.
Right.
So, you know, this is a project for the city of Jaffrey, but if you're talking about 30 communities wanting to do something like this with a company or companies, I think we could get it all wholesale, so to speak, and drive down the costs for everybody in that
Mhm.
coalition. In addition to ingesting some of the project funds that we're accumulating now.
Well, I think about it like the money that community power is gonna raise, right now they're saving it for the reserves.
Yes.
If you have a solar farm, that's your reserve. You have that energy that's in your
And it's
portfolio.
like a
it's always
battery.
There.
Right.
It's like
Yeah.
a battery.
Yeah.
yeah, I was
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
noticing in the minutes, they were looking at a deal with the hydro operation in Nashua.
Yep. Yep.
To take those wrecks and some of that load.
That load, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's the way it's gonna go in the future. Well, we're over time, but I want to thank all of you who have done great work. I mean, the explosion of information we had tonight shows us all of the opportunities. What I hear as follow-up action is next meeting, we're hoping for a proposal Herb, about wind, a proposal about feasibility study for that. And a proposal about municipal solar that may take longer, or do you think that'll be
Well,
ready?
No, I think we put between now and then, put
Okay.
together a proposal for that one also.
Okay.
To-
Sorry. Oh, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're good.
I just wanted to announce that Jillian Harris has been on the meeting the whole time, and Jillian Harris is the principal planner in the planning department, and she's gonna be coming to these meetings as well.
That's great.
So we'll introduce her formally when she's here, but just wanted to let you know that
Oh, great.
you're watching.
Welcome.
Hi there. Thanks for letting me listen in. Hope to see you all in May when the weather's a little bit better.
Yes.
That's good.
And then Betsy, you're gonna follow up with Peter Britz on the education and networking component?
The disincentives
Disincentives.
piece.
Oh, the disincentives.
Yeah.
piece. Got it.
First, I'm gonna talk to Tad so I can grill him
Oh,
harder.
Tom,
Tom
Tom,
Morgan.
sorry, Tom, Tad.
Tom Morgan.
Tad is somebody else.
Yeah.
Sorry.
yeah, talk
Yeah,
to
Tom,
Tom. Yeah.
I actually need a contact for him though. Peter, you probably have him on your speed dial.
I do not.
No.
I will.
Okay, thank you.
I know Tom.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I do not. Bottom of my list.
John, do you
That's
want me to
right.
reach out to Bill Lyons too about the transportation?
I think Counselor Cook, we're gonna do that.
Yep.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, we can both do it. See if we can,
Vincent,
yeah,
Do this,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Right. I know he's got a consulting job in Nairobi, but
oh, we can come in.
it hasn't, it's
We
been
gotta
less
get
travel than.
transportation before we do.
Yeah, that's right.
And so the education piece that was how are we gonna follow
That's
up?
Peter,
Okay,
but I think we'll, as a group, we'll tackle
Yeah, as
that
a
one
group, yeah,
together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we probably want to figure out like, what are the events we can bring information to? And that can determine format and yeah, Katrin, you probably have like a ready to-go list of stuff and decks and all sorts of.
Yeah,
stuff.
definitely. And just so you know, we actually are applying for a Solve It Prize right now with libraries to work on programming, to kind of partner,
Oh,
because
good
that's
idea.
where programming is so well done. And so helping them kind of like create that, have that ready, and then also.
Bingo, lights go on that.
Right. And in most small, no, I know it's different here. Most small towns in New Hampshire, their library is about the same size as a house. So you can actually see the library upgrade to the things that you'd be putting in your own home. Now it's comfortable, and familiar. So that's what we're working on, but that will be a great resource. And that's a place people naturally go. They feel comfortable and they trust.
Yep.
So,
Awesome.
And, the library not too long ago hired a outreach coordinator. I'm gonna call her a outreach coordinator. I can't think of her name right now, but she's amazing.
mm,
And Betsy, so she, you know, if we have
They'd
information.
be all over it. They'd love it.
it's just,
Yeah.
it's it seems like the perfect
Yeah.
place to do it. And you're not having to.
Everybody really loves and uses our library. in
Right,
Portsmouth.
right.
It's a
And
lead green building.
the people you're trying to reach often are big resources. That's a big
Mhm.
resource. So that's
Yeah.
perfect.
The library last year and this year is the driving force. Well, I shouldn't say the driving force. They are helping to sponsor the sustainability fair,
Oh, that's great. I'll be there
doing a great job getting the word out.
When is that?
next
April
weekend.
14th.
Oh, gosh.
Sunday,
We should probably get something to, it's not gonna
The
happen.
14th.
or a week from Sunday. Yeah.
Next Sunday, yeah.
If you, I'll have a table. If you have anything you want me to make sure I reach out to people about, and yeah. At least I've come to this meeting, so that last year I had no idea what you were doing, so I felt silly, but this year at least I'll know what you're working on, so I can
You
tell
know,
people.
Betsy, what we could do with the sustainability fair, we could have some kind of a sign up that
Mhm.
people who are interested in solar.
Oh, that's
or
a great idea.
Solar.
Yeah.
You
so
don't have to go.
get
You
some
can just give it to
contact
one of us.
information
Be there.
So that we
Um,
can go back. and
Yeah,
reach
can
out
we
to
do
them.
that?
Yeah.
Great idea. Yep.
We don't have anything right now to hand out to them, later
But
on.
a sign up's a good idea. Just
Yeah,
If you want
yeah.
more information.
That's a really good idea.
Mhm.
Okay, I'll put my name on that.
Yeah, and if for any reason you don't have anyone that can come, just let me know and I can at least have that at my table.
I think between the two of you.
Yeah,
Uh,
it'd be
yeah,
great.
enough people there.
Perfect. I would love
Any
to help.
other?
Oh, But that this challenge that we've signed up for, what are we doing at the sustainability fair to get people in the community to sign up for more renewables?
14.
Oh,
Should-
next Sunday.
That would have been a good
I
time.
don't know that we can pull something together by next Sunday.
We could maybe do a teaser.
You guys are gonna have to work hard. You've got some rough cities you're up against, so
Good.
we're gonna have to get that going.
It's gonna be tough. Could I be at somebody's booth to talk about how you sign up for more renewables? Can I be at one of
It's a
your
great
booths?
idea.
Okay.
Sure.
That's
And I
all
think I'll
Name
send,
Anyway.
yeah, I'll send whoever comes. Yeah.
right. Yeah, I know. I've been on like 4 different types of antibiotics. I swear. If you get it, it's not from me.
Okay.
One
Tell me more
more
about it.
technicality, we haven't approved the
just-
minutes.
Oh, we didn't approve the minutes, did we? Did everybody have a chance to read the minutes?
Yep.
Um,
I move
motion to approve,
motion to approve the minutes.
Yeah.
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Thank you for that, Stephanie. Good. Well, I think we've got plenty to work on. And let's keep those grants in mind. And Tracy, will more information flow down, do you think?
The implementation document should be out. I'm happy to, when I find it, happy to send it to folks.
That'd be great. That'd be great.
And I will not be here.
Okay. Thanks all for the great work. There's a lot in motion.
I have cards if anybody wants my contact information.
Katrin, thank you
Yeah.
for coming.
You have it? Yeah.